Member Honi Harawira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd actually like to start with a little bit of a history lesson here. This is an act passed in 1893. It's called an Act to Authorise the Acquisition of Land Owned by Natives for the Purpose of Land Settlement. 6th of October 1893. Whereas at least 7 million acres of land, principally situated, I'm not going to read the whole act of course, in the North Island of the colony, owned by natives and lying waste and unproductive, and in the interest of the natives and Her Majesty's other subjects in the colony, and more especially for the extension of settlement, it is necessary that such land should be made available for disposal under the land laws of the colony. And whereas the existing law for extinguishing by purchase the native title over a large proportion of such land fails to afford adequate means for supplying the rapidly increasing demand for land for settlement purposes, and great injury is thereby occasioned, and the progress of colonisation is retarded, and it is therefore necessary to provide further and other means by which lands owned by natives may be acquired for the purpose of disposal under the land laws of the colony. And then it goes on, Mr. Chairman, to talk over about pages and pages of in a language, in a legal language that I'd struggle to cope with today. And I doubt that any of my tupuna would have understood back in 1893. This act became later known as the Validation of Invalid Land Sales Act, Mr. Chairman. And I refer to that because it seems that what we're doing here is the same sort of thing. This one's called the Kaipara District Council Validation of Rates and Other Matters Bill, but in fact it's the Kaipara District Council Validation of Crooked Activities by the Council, its senior officers and other independent contractors and consultants bill. Because this isn't just about validating rates, this is about far more than that, and I think that we need to see it in that light. This issue, Mr. Chairman, has been the subject of much concern and comment from across the Kaipara and indeed Northland. And here we are as we look to retrospectively address the significant failures of the Council to follow a proper process and meet the requirements of the Local Government Act. Since 2006, Mr. Chairman, the Council has continually and consistently breached the Local Government Act and the Local Government Rating Act in a whole range of areas, such as the setting of rates and a series of failures to comply with various provisions of the Local Government Act. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read some of these because they are ongoing. The Council, in relation to the water supply rate for Maungaturoto Station Village, the Council did not comply with Section 19 of the Local Government Rating Act of 2002. In relation to the wastewater disposal rate, the Council did not comply with Section 18 of the Local Government Rating Act of 2002. These two I've just mentioned, Mr. Chairman, came from the 2006-2007 financial year. It goes on to point out failure to comply with Section 23 of the Local Government Rating Act, also in that year of 2006-2007. It then points out again, Mr. Chairman, that in 2007-2008 financial year, the Council did not comply with further sections of the Local Government Rating Act, did not comply with Sections 18 and 23 of the Local Government Rating Act, failed to comply with Section 45 of the Local Government Rating Act. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind me pointing this out, I then turn to 2008-2009, and we see that again the Council failed to comply with Section 19. I can shorten this with Sections 18 and 23, with Section 17, and again with Section 23. And Mr. Chairman, I'm pointing this out because these are ongoing. It's not just ongoing up until this became an issue. It continued in the 2009-2010 financial year. The Council did not comply with Section 19, Sections 18 and 23, etc., etc. And it simply continues 2010-2011. The Council failed to comply. The Council failed to Mr. Chairman, I've got quite a bit that I'd like to get on the record here, and it's the only time I've spoken on this, if you don't mind. I'd like to continue to
call the honourable member Hani Harawira.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I point this out because this failure to comply continued on in 2009, 2010, 2010, 2011, 2011, 2012, and 2012, 2013, Mr. Chairman. This is not what you call just a one-off case of somebody making a mistake. This bill covers years of criminally poor governance, a massive debt blowout, allegations of fraud, and a very public and acrimonious rate strike. This bill seeks to validate a series of what are clearly unlawful actions, and I say unlawful because they were wrong the first year. You can excuse it. The second year, smack on the hand. The third year, you've got to say something's wrong. The fourth year, you've got to say you're going to jail, mate. And the fifth year, and the sixth year, and the seventh year. Mr. Chairman, this continues. The bill seeks to validate a series of what are clearly unlawful actions taken by the Council in the setting of rates to legalise illegal rates demands and to end the rate strike. Rate strikers rightly oppose this bill because once their strike ends, they will no longer have the leverage to negotiate a solution that they deem to be fair. There are outstanding issues about the role of Audit New Zealand for failing to identify financial issues. There is a case to be considered against the bank for failing to do due diligence in their lending to the Council. The case was made to the government to provide assistance to Kaipara ratepayers in paying back the debt, but that was rejected because government didn't want to set a precedent for other local authorities. The Commissioners tell us that not supporting the bill would significantly increase costs to the Kaipara community because the Council's deficit would increase and services would be cut. The Council did not get their hands on the withheld rates. It rankles, Mr. Chairman, that the burden of debt repayment falls on the Kaipara community, who were not responsible for incurring the debt, but the bill seems the only way forward. People, councillors, senior managers, advisors, and independent consultants and contractors seem to have all acted in an appalling manner. There would seem to be, in my view, a clear case of continual and consistent fraud in respect of the multiple and ongoing breaches of local government legislation. The bill supposedly does not validate, Mr. Chairman, the overspend associated with the Mangawhai sewage treatment plant, but I wonder whether this bill is in fact the first step to another bill coming before the House for exactly such a bailout. I am told that this is the best solution in a difficult and challenging situation, Mr. Chairman, but I challenge that. I challenge that on the grounds that the iwi have not been consulted on this, Mr. Chairman, and I spoke to the chairman of Te Roroa, who are the local iwi in and around Dargaville, who was most upset that this bill had actually got into the House. They sit on the Mana Whenua Committee of the Kaipara District Council and have not been engaged in this process at all. I'd like to also point out the fact that although Te Runanga o Ngāti Whātua seem to have given their support for this bill, there is another member of the Mana Whenua Committee that has also been ignored. And accordingly, Mr. Chairman, I think that we shouldn't just be passing this bill without taking some serious action against some of these senior leaders. I mean, I know, for example, Donna Awatere, who was a member of this House, ended up in jail over a bill of about $200,000. I know that Doug Graham, who was a member of this House, got off a case for about $170 million. I know that here we've got a council, all of whom are looking not to go to jail over this, and this is going to be a $50 to $60 million blowout, Mr. Chairman. And I think that at some point, we can't just, I understand there's another bill coming up, the Tasman validation bill. I think sooner or later this House has to say, if you continue to do this sort of activity, you are going to end up going to jail. Because unless this House sends that kind of a signal, Mr. Chairman, then I think we're going to find ourselves in dire straits as we continue to move forward on these issues. These bills are coming thick and fast, and yet nobody is being made to pay, Mr. Chairperson, and I think it's entirely within the rights and expectations of all of the members of this House.
I call the honourable member Tim Mackinder.
It's been now put.
The question is that the question be now put. As many of that opinion will please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Point of order.
Point of order.
Member Andrew Williams.
Point of order, Mr Chair, but I have a supplementary order paper in the House here, which I haven't had an opportunity to speak to as yet, which I think it's important that I have an opportunity to speak to it.
Well, I can only say to the member that we've had about 17 calls and everyone has been given a fair go. And the situation is now that the question has been put and all business is deferred until the question is determined. So, the point of order, the Honourable
Mr Chairman,
Hani Harawira.
The gentleman was on his feet and calling for a point of order before you made your ruling. He called on numerous occasions.
Not true. Member will be seated. Member will be seated. Not true. I want to refer the member to Speaker's Rulings 10(4), and whenever a question is being put, that was being done to the House, the interpretation of business is deferred until the question is determined. Now, I put the vote. The question is, all those in favour, please say aye.
Mr Chairman.
To the contrary, no.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. Point of order, Mr Chairman.
Have it. Point of order, the Honourable Member Hani Harawira.
Mr Chairman, is it not parliamentary procedure that an SOP on a bill should be heard? That SOP was tabled in accordance with parliamentary procedure. Mr Andrew Williams is here as the author of that SOP, was willing to stand up and speak to it as part of this piece of legislation. He may not have been successful in that SOP, but surely he had the right to have that SOP properly heard. And I again make the point, Mr Chairperson, that apart from that he actually was on his feet and calling for a point of order to have that SOP heard before you ruled that the House would vote on this piece of legislation. So I think, for those reasons, Mr Chairman, that SOP should, in all fairness, be heard.
Well, all I can say is that a point of order can't be put until I'd actually taken the closure motion, because no member would know whether I was going to accept it or not. The question is, I've already put the question. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order. The ayes have it. I call the Honourable Member Andrew Williams.
Well, Mr Chairman, I actually was standing to take the call, and I got to my feet before the Honourable Tim McIntyre, and was actually on my feet. Your view might have been obscured by the Honourable Hani Harawira in front of me, but I had stood to speak to my supplementary order paper, and I was advised earlier, and we checked with the clerk, that I would have an opportunity to speak to my supplementary order paper.
The member is just relitigating the issue. I have made a ruling, and it stands. Point of order, the Honourable Member Barbara Stewart.
New Zealand First called for a party vote, and obviously you can't hear us down there.
I have called for a party. You want a party vote?
Yes, please.
Then the clerk will please conduct a party vote. Thank you.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes in favour.
Green Party.
Favour.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes in favour.
Mana.
Ko tehi te pōti kore whakai.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 vote in favour.
Honourable members, the ayes are 112, the noes are 8. The motion is agreed to. The question now is that the preamble the question is now that Andrew Williams' amendment to Part 2 set out on Supplementary Order Paper 406 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no.
Aye.
Party vote call for? The clerk will please conduct a party vote. Thank you.
New Zealand National.
59 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes in favour.
Māori Party.
3 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote opposed.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 vote opposed.
Honourable members, the ayes are 8, noes 112. The amendment is not agreed to. The question now is that the preamble, parts 1 and 2, clauses 1 and 2 stand part. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote called for. Clerk will please conduct the party vote. Thank you.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes in favour.
Mana.
Mana.
My apologies. Ko tahi te pōti kore whakai.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 vote in favour.
Honourable members, the ayes are 112, the noes are 8. The motion is agreed to. I will report this bill without amendment.
The House is resumed. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the committee has considered the Kaipara District Council validation of rates and other matters bill and reports it without amendment. Mr. Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The bill is set down for third reading forthwith. Mike Sabin.
Speaker, I move that the Kaipara District Council validation of rates and other matters bill be now read a third time.